Welcome to Becoming Proactive. So this is one of the series of 3 conversations that the MA Innovation Management 2021 graduating class from Central St Martin's are hosting within industry experts. So my name's Katherine Simpson. I'm a graphic designer and an alumni of the MA Innovation Management, and I'll be the host today. So joining us for the panel discussion, we have Kaave Pour from Space10, Paloma
Hello.
Garat. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, everyone give a shout out from Space10, and we got Paloma Garat from And Us.
Hello.
And then we've got our graduates. We've got Meng-Ting.
Hi.
Hi, nice. And then Prangvalai.
Hi.
And Tung Chien.
Hello.
And so the main theme of the MA Innovation Management 2021 Graduate Showcase is becoming. For this panel discussion, we'll be discussing how to become proactive. And in today's uncertain world, we are interested in asking how practitioners can notice the changing world, manage and embrace uncertainty through transdisciplinarity. As innovation managers, the cohort see becoming as an emergent force helping us escape from rigidity and immobility. And throughout the cohort's learning process, they've explored the concept of becoming as a never-ending flow that enables them to creatively imagine better futures. So now let's get started with the panel introductions. So let's start with our graduates. Could you introduce yourself, your background and your research disciplines? Anyone want to go first?
Okay, I think I can go first. So hi everyone, I'm Tung. My background is in business administration and management consulting. So I would like to rejoin the industry again, or probably shifted a bit into innovation consulting after graduation. So I conducted my research around forming an innovative and agile consultancy. So considering the current trend of the consultancies acquiring design studios and innovation labs, I explored the implementation of design thinking and agile methods within consultancies. And I will like to share more during the discussion. Thank you.
Great.
Right. So hi, I'm Pran. And I'm a graphic designer. So with my research is in how we frame the problems. And therefore I aim to integrate the knowledge that I got from my research and my background to work in design research lab or brand consultancy. And we'll see how we can, solve complex problem in the future.
Right.
Hi, I'm Meng-Ting, and my background is product design and gradually built an interest in the design management. My current research starts with the dialogue of improvisation and focus more on collective service design process and innovative design management. Yeah.
Thanks so much for introducing yourselves. So let's hear from the industry expert.
My name is Paloma, and I work at a boutique innovation consultancy called And Us. So the type of work that we do is we work with clients, especially large corporations, to help them embed innovation in the way they work so that they can make innovation inevitable. So we work with teams that are trying to create new products and services, and we coach them and we support them through the process of identifying their best opportunities and framing their challenges, to grow within their practice.
Next, so my name is Kaave. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Space10. At least that's my official title. Yeah, I think Space10. I mean, we call ourselves a research and design lab, and we are on a mission to try to create a better everyday life, not just for people, but also for the planet at large. And I guess our finest mission is on one side to try to see patterns in a very chaotic world and try to understand and kind of embrace complexity. And on the other side, try to really encourage people to be more curious, be more excited about the future, not be scared about it, not fight it, but really try to see it as an opportunity and try to find ways to bring as many people as possible along that journey. So that's kind of what we at least aim to do. I think we still have a long way to go, but we'll still try.
Sounds also really interesting. Like together, there's so much kind of like becoming. So let's get started on exploring this idea of becoming, and then we'll dive into becoming proactive. So our first question is, what does innovation mean to you and your work? So anyone want to jump in with what that means to them?
Yeah, because for me, I believe that innovation is not just about the product or the result of the thinking. It's not just about particular groups of people. It's not just about the process, not only the practice. So it's about like how every parts come together and creating something like purposeful for beautiful, not just only for yourself, but for for everyone and their community and their their country. So because for me, I'm coming from like a graphic design background. So it's a really creative practice, but it's easy to get lost in the visual aesthetic. I mean, it's not like a bad thing because it gives you the pleasure. But for me, like when I arrive in innovation field, and then it shows me there's a lot of things that can give you other pleasures that is not just from seeing or not just from visuals.
I think that's such a good point, and I think the word innovation, I think, is having some of the same challenges as the word design. It becomes these very broad terms that can mean a lot. And I think, at least for me, there's one part of it which is about a mindset, like a curiosity and an intent to not stay the same, but really be in the mindset of always looking at how you can evolve yourself or evolve what you're doing or changing things for the better. So it's a lot more about the process and the thinking and the mindset. And on the other side, obviously, it's not just research. Innovation is also kind of making that research actionable or having an outcome behind it. So for us, innovation is also like doing something new that has a positive impact on the area that you're doing that new thing in, where you could say, for me at least, design is maybe more of an evolution that you go through. Innovation is maybe also more of a very, very different mindset or very different starting point, but they really merge quite closely together.
About the mindset, because if referring to consulting work, it's about bringing new values to the client. So you always need to try, and the consultant should provide like fresh perspectives so that the clients can think outside of their industry's box. And if to a smaller scale, even if it's for similar services, you always need to try to execute it in more effective and efficient way. And to me, it's relatively simple. So it's about something unconventional, but feasible. So you always need to be idealistic, but practical at the same time to deliver all the stuff.
Absolutely. I love that you talk about like being idealistic. I think for me, innovation that has like a key element of like passion. So obviously you need to think about like the outcome, and I could talk about like what I do as like developing new products and services and business models. But for me, I like to think of innovation as being relentlessly curious about people, like empathizing with them to understand like hopes and fears and dreams, and using that to create things that make their lives easier and better, like that connection with that passion for like leaving this world maybe like a little bit better than you found it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, innovation means jump out of the box. From my work about product design is sometimes in a fixed structure and process. So for me, innovation as a change always generates when I keep trying to be more provocative and think differently by collaboration or co-design, coming with something new or making all things becoming better and practice it. This is the innovation process, I think, not only about ideas, but also needs practice to make things come true relating to my work. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like this idea of like something staying the same and then the change for the better and moving from and like doing something to bring something to life is part of that process, whether it's a mindset, whether it's the framework, whether it's the actual the product, the end result. Feels like that's where innovation, the power of innovation, is about doing things for the better, from hearing everybody's thoughts, which I guess leads us into the next question, which is around this sort of state of becoming. So within your practice, what is constantly in a state of becoming for you?
Innovation is not a process with a beginning and an end, and that, you know, becoming, after all, implies that there's no stopping point. And I really believe that, you know, like, as we're all like passengers in spaceship Earth, we're trying to make sense of it all and figure things out as we go along, right? So within my practice, I would say that the thing that's constantly in the state of becoming is everything. I think it's important to acknowledge this. We like to make sure that people and organizations and ourselves are intentional about learning, so that we can use it as a source of inspiration and as a source of innovation itself. So, and this is all about like equipping people with the right mindsets, but also, you know, with the structures that enable them to like learn and apply this mindset.
Love the idea of the passengers and what we're going to do as passengers. So great.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I mean, I feel like Paloma has such a great way to put it, and because I also think, like, you know, in our like innovation practices, and even also like in the designer practices, we also experiment a lot, and we also develop like from time to time. And if you look back 5 years ago, like our design style probably changed a lot from that time, and same as the innovation practices. And also because it's such like collaborative practices, then in a way you and your peers influence or inspire each other, and then, you know, to keep experimenting, try different things, and then you becoming something else together.
For me, studying and working are constantly in a state of becoming. When studying and working, new information and knowledge will generate and refresh my understanding towards maybe the self-identity, industry, and the society, and it let me stay at the state of becoming and constantly reshaping myself. So as for me, it is a great process, like always facing new challenges and keep developing in this way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can totally link with Paloma, because like as a consultant, you can't stop learning, because your clients kind of like rely on you to stay always ahead of time, because when they are going to enter a new industry or like expand their businesses, they need you to do the homework. But I think that meanwhile, it's like the consultants are trying to add a little bit more touches on that. So we should always like keep on learning and like observing this world about what is happening. So yeah, that's from my point.
Yeah, really exciting answers already. I think reflecting on it, I think for Space10, we have this saying that we are not built to last, but to evolve, and that whether it's the solutions that we are developing or the way we're working, like you could say, our responsibility is to change with the world around us. And I think especially in this time where everything is changing rather fast, a process can quickly become too long for the original solution to be relevant in the world it's being born into. And like sometimes you need to think that mechanism into this idea of becoming. So like, what is it? What is the world where this solution would see the light in? It's, you know, innovation sometimes can be just a few months, but it can also sometimes be many years out in the future. And then suddenly we can think into a future that might not really be relevant when this is kind of accessible. And then I think the other part of it is obviously this thing about not having one future, like there's many futures, and we can often think about it in a very singular way where we see it, even though we try to put our own biases away, but it's very often that we then still design into that one future. And I think the interesting part going forward around what is becoming, it is definitely the plurality of innovation. And we are working, for example, on this, you could say, matrix where there are certain things that will be relevant for everyone in the world. You could say they are more universal needs. We all need to sleep as a good example of that. And then there are, at the last level, there is the individual future where it's so unique that nobody else than that person will actually ever truly understand it. We might come very close, but we will never truly understand it. And I think when we talk about becoming, I think it's very important in innovation to really quite early find out where are you designing, because you can design universal solutions for everyone, but you can also design things that are very unique for the individual one. But you can quickly fuck up basically if you try to do both at the same time sometimes. And I guess that's very interesting for me, at least in terms of what is becoming now is often being set into maybe very generic boxes and methods and processes, and at the end kind of excludes the complexity and the nuances and the more softer elements in innovation that I feel has been missing for a while.
It seems that because this constant state of becoming, it seems from listening to everybody, it's around the influences, whether it's the entity of the future and what that looks like, or the client's needs, or the individual's needs, or a collective needs. It's these influences of what's going to actually influence the becoming, the thing that it's going to become. So we're saying this is about noticing unexpected change in the world, and we see, think, and collaborate, not only to solve problems, but find problems. And our panelists, we're bringing this knowledge and experience from design, business, innovation management to explore these proactive approaches across different disciplines. So Space10 makes problem solution visually pleasing and accessible with technology, and which in turn it makes it easier for people to relate to research and problems and experimentations and solutions, and helping the general public to design and maybe innovate by themselves, and that manifests in their work that innovation is for everyone. And Paloma, she's the coach, the facilitator for her clients, so to become innovative in their practice, and therefore sharing the knowledge to a wider group and the audiences. So this might mean anyone can be innovative. And we would like to know how to enable others to assist in that problem solving process. So with that in mind, kind of giving the tools of innovation out there to other people, do you think that democratization of innovation will become a way to revolutionize problem solving, empowering users or, our clients to innovate?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that, 20 years ago, if you wanted to create perhaps a tech company, you would have needed about $10 million. And maybe 10 years ago, maybe that number was down to $5,000. But today, pretty much anyone, you just need a laptop, an idea, and quite a bit of patience. And I don't think that democratization of innovation will become in that way, that it will become the way to revolutionize. I think it has become, and this is mostly true, I guess, for most Western societies or societies with widespread access to tech. But in many ways, I guess we're not talking about the future, we're talking about the present with the clients I work with. It's about the democratization of organizations as well. So how do you get people to ensure, that, how do you ensure that the people that are closest to the problems are the ones that are addressing them and are able and empowered to solve them? And how do you, go from top-down hierarchies to flatter and more networks organizations where instead of climbing, you are growing inside the network? Or how do you distribute authority and then power and make sure that it's not just whatever the boss says goes? This century, that is enabled by technology, I think we'll see that democratization of innovation, but also of everything. I think like generations like mine, like my peers and the clients that I coach probably are to different extents catching up with this process. I'm pretty sure that, in the future, probably biggest catalyst of this process will also be our children, because, I bet that they won't have it any other way, and that democratization enabled by technology will be a lot wider than we think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because I think there's this idea of post-rationalization, right? That like sometimes, especially if you talk with artists or creatives and you ask them about their process, they might be good at explaining their process and what they go through. But actually, if you are then asking them, okay, really honest, what did you really do? Were you really thinking all those things into that solution when you did it? Or did it just feel right? And then afterwards you post-rationalized a lot of stuff onto that. And my feeling is that often, at least with creative work and design work, we try to put a term on it or a process on it to kind of see whether we could repeat it or not afterwards. If you do something good, you would like to be able to do it again. And I think sometimes when we talk about the democratization of innovation, we also almost imply that like it doesn't happen already today, which it does. People are solving small and big problems on an everyday level. And I think at least my reflection is that often innovation is a great addition if you want to more encourage this more wild curiosity, as you mentioned, Paloma, or this really idea of creating a safe space to fail. Whereas maybe design and development is very much like a dependency on succeeding and evolving and developing and doing it over and over and again, where if you then want to create that safe space for people to do things in a different way or test or experiment, then obviously innovation can be a great vehicle, a great term to kind of excuse yourself for doing something different. But I think sometimes we can also look at innovation as the thing that will solve a lot of things. And I think many big companies, if they would post-rationalize, they would say this was a big innovation. Like, let's take IKEA. They would say the flat pack was a big innovation, or the self-serve was a big innovation, but they were not doing it as an innovation project where they came up with those things. So it may be post-rationalized, we would now call it innovation, but back then it was just out of necessity, or out of curiosity, or just like out of intuition. And I think finding that balance can be extremely important, because there is this notion that if you just have an innovative process, everybody can be innovative. I think that's why I'm so excited about the idea of democratization of innovation, but it's not necessarily the democratization of the process, but more the democratization of the topics and the problems and the data that we would like people to engage with, and not necessarily facilitating the actual outcomes of it.
Yeah, that's very great. I would like to, I resonate with Kaave's answer really well, because it just feel like I think it's a great way where we democratizing all the knowledge, or even sharing the process where we can learn from each other. But if we talk specifically about innovation in itself, or using innovation to solve problem, then we might have to ask ourselves, like, what is the innovative problem solving? Like, is there anything such one? Or like, I mean, in a very small scale, like very individual scale, I mean, I think people definitely have new ways to solve a problem within themselves. And when it comes to organization or something bigger than that, so what else constitute like innovative? But as Kaave said, maybe it's like the post-rational, where we look back and we think, oh, that's actually innovative. That's actually innovation that we came up with. So it's actually like along the process where you use your experience, use your intuition, cognition, skills, and a lot of other things where innovation really happened from that. I just read a book about democratizing innovation, actually, because my friend recommended me last week. And actually, there's a sentence where it's really interesting that people actually enjoy the process because when there are less expectation, and actually they value it more because there are less pressure, less expectation. But not all people want to involve in the process or in the like that feeling of uncertainty. So we have to like be aware of that as well. So I mean, for sure, everyone can solve problem, everyone can engage in the process, but not all are enjoying like the way some people does.
Yeah, I think following Prang's answer, because like when I'm conducting my research, I interview some consultants, and they mentioned that most of their clients or users actually like being empowered. So they are taught or educated of how to involve in this process. And both sides, like the consultants and the clients, they feel like it helps with building the foundation because it actually breaks the hierarchy of knowledge and experience to fasten the process of problem identifying and problem solving. But based on my own experiences and the observation, sometimes like some consultants, they may be biased. So instead of like providing a fresh perspective, you're kind of like led. And for me personally, I totally agree that people can, in a smaller scale, everyone can solve problem. I think it's linked back to what Kaave mentioned about like united needs. So when you collect information or like insights from the crowd, you actually know how to solve the problem of the majority. But as to if it's revolutionized, I personally don't know. It can be, cannot be, because you need like more drivers to make it happen. And you always need to balance this up, not to be led by either directions. So yeah.
As for me, like I think innovation really happens with co-creation. Like recently, we organized a service design workshop for co-design. We invite users, governmental personnel, and IT company get together to discuss about government website interface to better service user with different perspective and effective cooperation by the stakeholders, users, and designers. Finally, we acquire useful suggestions for further development. I think a well-designed co-creation workshop focuses all parties to discuss the problems and solution together, and it will help to unleash the creative energy of many people.
Can I add a little bit to Chris' answer, because I really like that she mentioned co-creation. And actually, when I did my research and I interview like the founder of design like brand consultancy studios, and then they mentioned about doing the workshop with their clients, where that is the space they bring all the stakeholders or people who make decisions, and they come together and then they see what is the problem at hand, and they can see for themselves. In fact, they also empower the clients and also the consultancy, because they feel like this is their problem and this is where they can actually make it happen. So I think that's kind of like another way, which I think is really interesting.
Absolutely. I love that you're touching on like so many like different ways that like co-creation and other like types of facilitation can like realize that sort of like promise of like democratizing innovation. I think it's very much about access to a culture that supports those who want to explore that, like new opportunities and create new things, that they have a safe space so that innovation can flow everywhere in an organization, and less about everyone. It can get too overwhelming to sit with it and experiment with it. And so they would jump to solutions directly to avoid the uncertainty. The ultimate goal is not to teach innovation to everyone and to expect everyone to do it, but is to give people an experience, and we give people and clients an experience that empowers them to build those mindsets and capabilities to do it themselves. yeah, and basically like trying to create environments, create playgrounds where innovation becomes inevitable.
I think that's a really good point, and I think what I've at least learned the hard way has been that like the facilitation in the beginning of an innovative process is fairly approachable. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of openness, and you can ideate or you can discuss and immerse yourself into various topics. But for innovation to also then be realized, it can take really long time, right? Like it's like almost frustratingly long time sometimes, and it can last for years. New ideas are extremely fragile in the beginning, so you really need to protect them and nurture those ideas until they kind of are at a stage where they can take some hits and take some critique and take some skepticism for the wider either organization or group of people. But the other part is like, how do you not just design these new things in a vacuum, but really start to build connectivity with the business? And when do you start that, and when and how much do they engage at what levels? And sometimes people, they talk about handover, and I think that's a very dangerous term, because like nobody will just take something from someone else and then just apply it. So it's more of a graduate process of like, when do we have them in? And then maybe we need some space for those to then take that. But at some point, they also need to feel an ownership of it, because the real heroes are not necessarily the ones who are innovating it, but actually the ones who are deploying it and working with it and scaling it over a 30-year time span, maybe sometimes, right? Like read an article around how we are not good enough at celebrating people who are maintaining things. We only celebrate people who are making new things, but the real heroes are often the ones who are really maintaining and keeping our society together. So there's a really nice quote from the founder of Pixar who talks about the future is not a destination, it's a direction. And I think that goes quite well with these innovative projects, that you'll never probably reach a destination for the project.
Yeah, I think I can totally relate to what Kaave just said, because like during my research, I interviewed those consultants, and like most of the consultants, their organizations actually acquired other labs or studios, but most of when they are implementing new methodologies or ideas, it seems like the organization just like think we acquire them and you will merge eventually. But instead, there are some organizations, they acquire new parts for like 7-8 years, but without like the facilitation and like helping them come together. They still feel like separated. You're doing your stuff, I'm doing my stuff. I know this methodologies, but I don't know how to use it, or I'm not familiar with this.
So it's such a big question. It seems like it's covering so many different parts of like innovation with like democratization. Just thinking about that idea of like how you protect the core while still kind of like tinkering at the edges, and what that means, and how you merge them together in the end. And one of the things I was from the conversation was around like people going out into uncertainty as a metaphor of like going out for a swim in the ocean without any inflatables, or like, and you just throw them in and it's like, how long are we going to be here? Like, you know, how long it's going to take. It's like, what guardrails do people need to have permission? And then also the people who are going to protect the core in a way that allows change and evolution to happen on, you know, at different scales. Also thinking about those ideas of who are we heroing in the innovation process. Something that I think, Kaave, you were saying that, you know, which part are we hearing? Is it individuals? You know, is it these people who are doing the work for 30 years? And like, maybe there's that conversation that is really important, so that it is democratized, the individuals who make it happen. I think we're talking, one of the next questions was around like what allows innovation to thrive. I feel like we're broaching on like, you're talking about culture being the, you know, the human factor. And, you know, we say innovation allows industries and organizations to thrive, but what allows innovation to thrive was the next question.
I think there are many ways for that to thrive, but from at least our setup with Space10, I think that we often see it a little bit like connecting it to what we would call organized chaos, like a sports game is often organized chaos. You know, you have maybe some things that have been set in motion, but the actual play within can change, and you can't exactly structure who gives the ball to who runs where. The same if you look at a playground or a very busy restaurant. You know, you can't exactly control where everyone is moving in the exact times, but you can kind of create a system where that chaos can kind of thrive. And I think I really like the analogy of building playgrounds. So if you were to build a playground in your city, there's a lot of really hard and some would say boring work that needs to happen in the beginning. You need the permits, you need the safety check, you need to buy the material, or you need to do the contract. There's a lot of things. You need the funding for who pays for that playground, and there can be a lot of fun still in building the playground, but like the purpose of building the playground is for kids to play on that playground. And the best playgrounds are not super linear in what you can do. It can be a lot of random things that can happen in that playground. So I think in the same analogy you can use if you are a business who wants to make innovation thrive beyond culture and beyond people. It is about creating these spaces for new ideas, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of trust and investment in creating that space where then it can be free. And I think sometimes people are just so eager and moving straight into play that they maybe build a very small playground and then, you know, it's maybe fun to play there for a few times, but then that playground is kind of a bit boring after a while. And then you seek something new where the ones who are really investing in building a huge, amazing playground. So as a company, you need to do that investment in the beginning and think things long-term and really invest in that safe space and play space. And then the rest, I think, will come more naturally than what people expect. So that's at least what we have tried to do with IKEA, is like really looking at long-term contracts, for example, like really try to avoid projects that are only funded for a month, but really look at 2-3 years ahead, really looking at programs and not projects, really looking at bigger desired goals of impact rather than specific project deliverables, and really creating the legal foundation and the financial foundation for our team to not think about NDAs or think about IP all the time, but just knowing that they can write that person on Slack and they will take care of it, and they will simply drown in opportunity and drown in complexity if you don't create that system for them. So that balance, I think, is very, very valuable.
That is so interesting. And actually, because when we say about like playground, or say a lot of like about playing and, you know, just experimenting, then we often think of kids, children, but actually adults like to play as well. I mean, they're like, you know, like the adventure, and I mean, especially in the space where they feel like it's all safe to be adventurous. I think that's really nice. And yeah, and I mean, I just want to add about, you know, what innovation like thrive on. I mean, that's definitely like the uncertainty, because you know, when things are unpredictable, then you start questioning, you start sensing something, and then, you know, you do something about it. But which I think Kaave like had a really nice way to, like, you know, put it together as a playground. And I also want to just add a little bit about the like the notion of care and empathy. And for me, like when you care about something, or when you know, feel like this is truly matters, and that's actually when you start making it happen because you care about it. And I guess that is, you know, for me, that is when innovation matters.
Yeah, I really like the metaphor of the playground, that everyone can totally get the idea. Because like when I'm interviewing my the consultants, they mentioned about like, yeah, you really need the space to allow you to endure to experiment. But normally in consultancies, like when you have that space only when in between projects. So let's say it's only a couple of weeks, 1 to 2. So the playground is definitely too small for everyone to try. And for me, I think it's like you have to be observant. I think just as Prang said, you notify those uncertainties, and then you need to be open-minded, and then you will be willing to try.
I love that. I love that you were talking, Tung, about like, you know, as consultants and like as practitioners, like what do we need also to you know, like what is our playground, right? Is it in between assignments or projects? So you are like in the collaboration with the client, you are creating the space for them to, you know, experiment their way through innovation and like, you know, build it, bringing the right mindsets, you're creating that space. You kind of need to participate of it in a way. So, you know, like if you are really creating that for them, like role modeling, such an important part of it. So you not just build that playground overall in the organization so that those teams that are like being empowered and enabled to innovate can thrive and actually realize their impact, but how can you experiment your way into like redesigning your organization? You know, how can you like run experiments and involve the, you know, the leadership, all the different stakeholders in like testing and learning? What are those new ways of, you know, those new processes, those new ways of being, like those new relationships. So it is, you know, it has like that play and that playground and that concept of experimentation can be applied even to this is getting a bit meta, but even to the process of building the playground itself.
Like building inclusive playground and concept like the adults adventure for experiments, something like that. Maybe with that fresh new ideas and well-performed practice and application might help innovation thrive, I think, yeah.
So the question was around transdisciplinarity, it's a mouthful, has been manifested in innovation management a lot. And do you think it's a key to achieve innovation?
I think it's a very, very important question. And I think like the importance of diverse and converging perspectives into these matters are like essential for things to actually have a positive impact for people and planet at large. I think we've seen over the last, maybe almost unfortunately forever, that often design and innovation has been, you know, towards this idea of a reference man, you know, like one persona who is being the ones that you know, in the use case, who is, you know, the ones who are designing it, who are building it, you know, the teams are often in that sense as well. We see it especially with technology innovations today. And it's just so obvious, and so many studies are also backing it up, that like it just excludes so many people from solutions when they actually hit the market, or they have, if we go back to the ripple effects, they have really big ripple effects on a negative side towards people who are already maybe not having a strong voice in the larger conversation around designing for better everyday life. So I think that's a huge problem right now, and even though it's being discussed, and there is a lot of I think movements where especially younger generations are really flagging that this is not even close to be okay. I think we're still to see the acceleration of really changing that, and I'm really curious to see or hear your answers to this too.
Mm.
Yeah, I think to me, it can be the foundation, but like, again, I don't know if it's definitely one of the elements, but I don't know if it's like the key, because I feel like from time to time, you actually need to control or balance it a bit, because like throughout the whole process to innovate, there's definitely some phases you need to listen to the crowd, to listen from more people to involve them. But there are definitely some other parts you need to focus on some specific groups only. So it's about like the filtering, when you turn this on, when you invite everyone, when you choose certain parts. But I think the basic is you need to have like a transdisciplinary team. So I think that is quite important.
Yeah, I totally agree with Tung. So I think it's an important factor, but maybe like the whole heart of innovation is not just about transdisciplinarity only, because there's a lot of like factors, and you know, as Kaave mentioned, because for example, from my experience working individually as a freelancer and also working in teams with the clients, I mean, you might think like, okay, working individually is like, it's just you building the work, but actually when you propose that to the clients, then they might also offer you other aspects and sharing some of their experience where you cannot imagine and where you like never think of before. So that kind of add up to another level of complexity, add up to another, the depth of the work or your vision. So where, as a result, you can produce the work that is actually matters for yourself, for your client, and for the end users. So I think it's still a great quality that you should have in your innovation practice.
Absolutely. I think like it is absolutely essential to innovation, to create that like diversity of thought and experiences. We don't operate, in a single universe with a single truth. Like we are in a multiverse with like multiple perspectives. And someone described once like innovation in part of my language as ideas having sex, and like different things and views and perspectives like coming together to form new things and new perspectives. And it's so important like to really embrace that. And my favorite story is like about the Olympic gold swimmer Ian Thorpe. I think you guys might know it. They were trying to make this swimsuit that would allow him to swim faster, meaning like have him move faster through water. And they initially studied like torpedoes, trying to replicate the shape of those. But then they worked with a marine biologist who suggested to look at sharks. And the shark skin is not smooth, it's actually rough, right? And it creates like air pockets that the water just glides on. And that was the inspiration for the swimsuit that helped him win like countless medals. It was even debated whether it was okay for him to wear it in fair play. And would they have come up with that idea in a room full of swimsuit designers with 20, 30, 40 years of experience? Probably not. So, like to the extent that it enables you to like look outside your category and, it's great for a business, and also to go outside of your comfort zone, both as individuals and as organizations, like really healthy as well. I guess it's like a little bit of a counter argument.
For me, I think it might be important elements to achieve innovation, like the example of the service workshop with different stakeholders. Transdisciplinarity help me and my work become more innovative with different perspectives colliding together, and new ideas generated by this co-design and hybridization. I think, in my view, transdisciplinarity contributes to scientific and systems uncertainty and high decision stakes. And I think nowadays sometimes the problem is not just a linear, simple questions, but interconnectional, complex problem combined with different discipline. So it might help to solve more complex social problems in this way. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because everyone has said like it's a super important part of the innovation process and practice. It feels that everyone needs to be on the same goal. Is really important to bring that team together so they're serving the innovation rather than other aspects that we want to serve, like egos and my department and all these elements that are also part of that practice of and also just we're human beings.
I mean, to be honest, I think to manage the transdisciplinary team in itself is innovation, because we are human, we are from different cultures, different backgrounds, and then you need to find a new way every time to manage and how to collaborate within this team. So I think it itself is already like an innovation task for us.
How can an organization be proactive? Do you feel it needs to be embedded in your values individually, collectively?
So for me, like 100% needs to be embedded in your values, and it might mean different things to you as an organization. So for Andas, like for example, we have embedded in our DNA like a set of values that we live by, and we coach our, like I myself like coach our clients into. and also like influences greatly how we approach the process of supporting and enabling organizations to become innovative. And the two that I think, I wanted to share two of those that I think are really crucial to being proactive and, importantly, as well, responsive. So the first one is creating good trouble. So we like to call ourselves good troublemakers because, we really take it upon ourselves to provoke the change and the opportunity within like the work that we do with our clients. So, not just like ourselves, like challenging the status quo and, helping them reframe what they do, but also coaching them to, like be good troublemakers as well. And that involves a lot of like taking things lightly, like being playful around like that productivity and just like, again, like feeling safe, like you have the safety to be able to like try new things and like experiment and see what works and what doesn't.
It's definitely, has to embed in your value and but in a way, like organization or a team, as according to Kaave, like in the previous questions, you need to build like a foundation or a playground where they can like actually experience that and learning and seeing and thinking, and then eventually they'll gradually become more proactive. But I mean, it takes time to do that, but you definitely need like a foundation for them, like a playground for them, so that to happen. So I guess this is more like a goal, like a long-term goal for organization to become proactive, because but ultimately then when you're already proactive, then you sense the potential problems where you can deal with them before it becomes like a real problem. So I think that's like a long-term goal.
Yeah, I think following from Paloma and Prang, so referring back to what Katherine mentioned before, I think that, one of the important thing is that the organization has to have everyone share the same goal. So everyone knows that you're going toward that direction. And in a sense, if you embed that in individually and collectively, your employees trust that and understand that vision as well. So like together, you will be proactive in a sense.
I can go next. I mean, it's a fun word, right? Like being proactive or reactive, because I think even though many they dream of always being proactive, I think often being a bit more, maybe not reactive but responsive. I really like that word that you bring up, because like if companies or ideas needs to stay relevant for a lot of people, they should be more of a response to a need or a dream or an aspiration, rather than being a preconceived idea of what is right or wrong within that company. So I think it's a very delicate balance to, on some things, really double down and say, this is where we want to be part of shaping the future. We want to lead it. Maybe you are a market leader, then you obviously need to lead the market. But there are also other areas where I think there's a lot of beauty in actually being a lot more responsive to what are around you, rather than thinking that we can plan ahead and prepare for everything and shape everything ourselves. And with so many different needs and dreams and aspirations that are not just from many people, but also from the planet, it's going to be a lot more about how to invent mechanisms for being responsive faster, rather than necessarily being really good at proactively planning ahead. But the speed of decision making, the speed of action to be taken based on an emerging need, thing we have seen, especially over the last year with COVID. You can plan certain things around being ready for potential pandemic and having certain parts of the infrastructure ready, but we cannot plan and be proactive for all of the ripple effects that comes from that. So if a company believes they will succeed by only being proactive, they will likely see themselves in quite deep waters, because proactive is about long-term thinking, it's about planning, but it's not necessarily about fast reactions, fast decisions, fast movements. So, finding that sweet spot, I think, will be extremely important, especially if you're not a huge company who has the resources to really think really long-term. Obviously, governments and others needs to be a lot more on that line, but other companies, studios, the startups, they likely have to be a lot more responsive to the world around them rather than proactively trying to shape it themselves.
I feel like this conversation has been a becoming in itself, and there's something quite beautiful about, like, we've been bringing it, all of us together. After just listening to the kind of conversation, I've put down like the 5 Ps of being proactive from what some of the things you've all said. So we kind of have the purpose, the passion, the playground, the plurality of, you know, the what's going to happen, and practice, it being part of the daily practice and the future practice. So thanks everyone for joining the conversation today, and I wish everyone well with their journey of becoming proactive. So we give a round of applause to our panelists. So we got Kaave and Paloma, Meng-Ting, Prang, and Tung.